I went from there's a fear in creating such a vivid, concrete example of where we want to go. Did you see a difference in the quality of the people that you were able to bring onto the team after that?
This is what I want. This is how I can see myself achieving that. My wife, they're developing their own vivid visions for their personal lives, health, relationships, friendships, adventure, wealth. Those are more of the individual buckets, but in that career section, they're mapping out their future. But with AI now, it's more about sitting down and brainstorming because AI can kind of write the rest. Like we know, there's a lot of money to be thrown away.
All right. We are live and welcome back to another episode of Marketing Without Rules, the show where we work to inspire business owners by bringing on guests who exemplify the hunter mindset. They make moves, they color outside the lines, and they have found creative ways to channel the attention of their community into currency. This show is sponsored by Blue Crocus Solutions, a web design and SEO agency focused on helping home service companies. I am your host, Lewis Vandervalk, and today I have the pleasure of a repeat chatting with Barry Hartman. Barry has a lot of accolades, not the least of which is that he is a previous guest of this podcast. He's also responsible for me losing sleep. I've been tossing and turning, figuring out how to get vivid vision painted for my team, how to implement some of the leadership stuff that we chatted about on the previous podcast, and how to make the most of this second episode with him. Success leaves clues, and it's been really fun getting to see a bit inside Barry's world. He is the co-founder and CEO of 505 Junk, a 6 million plus junk removal company. And Barry has built one of the most innovative and community-focused businesses in the greater Vancouver area. He also has a passion for leadership, marketing, and helping others achieve success that led him to launch Bolt Accelerator, a coaching platform designed to empower junk removal entrepreneurs to own their markets. Barry's mission is simple: to help business owners scale sustainably, create lasting impact in their communities, and achieve financial freedom. Welcome to the show again, Barry.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
For sure. No, excited about this one. We had a really good chat the first time, and I'm not kidding. I've been thinking a lot about, I actually bought Vivid Vision after we chatted, and I'm just slowly munching my way through it. Usually I tear through a book, but it's this one's you got to let the parts sink in and then kind of move to the next section. So it's been fun. I appreciate that recommendation.
Yeah, it's more of a manual, isn't it? You can reference back certain chapters and just if you're working on a certain aspect of your vision, pull back to that specific area. And yeah, it's been a huge part of it. I actually just finished up a call before this talking to someone in Bolt, helping them draft their, vision for the next 3 years in the Seattle market. And it's pretty cool to go through it.
I love it. I think I really want to, the reason that we kind of planned this second round was to really dive into marketing KPIs, all the stuff that people bleed, in places that they don't even know they're bleeding quite often. But I think I do want to start with Vivid Vision. It's vividly on my mind. And I think it's something that, kind of seems kind of fluffy to a lot of people. If I was to tell you, you got to have a vivid vision for your team, I think that'd be kind of ridiculous. But I just started seeing signs pop up all over the place. It was very fortuitous in when we had the conversation because I was going through some leadership challenges, and vivid vision was something that we haven't had. And then I had Matt Plapp on the podcast, and he talked about his vivid vision. And he's we've got a fully laminated, magazine style vivid vision that's got our $5 million plus, facility that we're going to build in the next 3 years that he has no idea how he's going to build, but that's what the team's shooting for. And I'm okay, you got to touch it, you got to feel it. And then I'm with our kids, and I'm telling them stop whining, tell me what you're thinking about, because I'm going to help you. I just don't know what's in your brain. So if you're just crying and just saying, this, but I don't know that you want a hug or you want to be picked up, then I don't have the vivid vision of what you need. Help me understand that. I'm well, you dummy, you're telling your kids to do it and you're not even doing it for your team. How much simpler does it get? So I'd love if you would go back to when this hit you, across the forehead, or when you took action and what happened. Because I think paint us a vivid vision of what happened when you started paying attention to this stuff.
Yeah, we've done 3 reiterations of it now. So I guess that's 9 years. So, going back to 2015, probably.
Is it always a 3 year? You just religiously do the 3 year?
Yeah, I like 3 years because we do an annual strategic plan on a, annual basis. And that gives us sort of a very clear, step-by-step direction as to what we need to be doing with our team in the next 12 months. But if there's no real vision or purpose behind that year, then I find it sort of you just roll into the next year, sort of when entrepreneurs get caught in the day-to-day grind, they just roll into the next day. And so
Yeah.
the annual, gives you clarity around the month, the quarter, the week, and all that.
Yep.
But the vision gives you clarity for your years. And we've got basically 3 years to hit the vision. 5 years is a bit of a stretch. And if anyone's writing a really detailed vision for 10 years out, I mean, 5 years ago, we didn't know AI was going to take over. So who knows, right? So yeah, that's why I found 3 years is a bit of a sweet spot.
Nice. So what happened 9 years ago that kind of changed that for you?
So we were going through a bit of a day-to-day grind. The years were going by and we didn't have clarity on where we wanted to grow our business to. We had ideas and we had, thoughts and conversations and we were throwing things out there and everyone was excited, but there wasn't clarity around what we wanted to, 3 years from today. And I kept having the same conversation over and over and over with business partners, with employees, with my partner at the time, with suppliers, with people that we were looking to get an office space from. And when I came across Cameron Herold's book, I found it so much easier to be able to, first of all, getting my own thoughts out and my business partner's thoughts out onto one document was great. Second of all, so much easier just to forward it to people and just say, here's where we're going in 3 years. If you want to join us on this journey, you're more than welcome to, without having to just keep saying the same thing over and over and over again.
So let's say the first round, like what was that first experience for you doing it? Like, because I think I'll speak from my experience. As I start thinking about it, there's like, how will I be able to pivot as I need? Because I think we think in the startup phase, like the ability to pivot is like our superpower, right? But no one wants to just join an organization where everybody's pivoting all the time and running pell-mell in every single different direction. So what was that experience for you when you first put pen to paper and really solidified it and started, giving it out? Was there any of that fear when you started?
Yeah. So the first time we just booked our office was nothing to be inspired by at the time. It was our first office space outside of my parents' basement. And, there's trucks coming in and out and people coming in and out and the phones were ringing. So the first thing we did was like find a place where we could book a full day outside of the day to day. And honestly, it was one of the first days where we actually empowered our team to just take care of the business for the day on itself, knowing that we didn't want any interruptions at all. Not surprisingly, it went perfectly smoothly. People are capable of doing great things outside of the business owners. And it was a great learning lesson in itself. But what we wanted to do was we wanted to really whiteboard all the big picture sort of things that we wanted. So we bucketed it down into specifically for junk removal operations, sales, finance, marketing, our team, and really started listing out 3 years from that day, writing in sort of present form, what do we want this company to look, feel like, act like? And we just put all our sort of head bullet points down on a whiteboard. We then took all that information and just started crafting out more paragraph form so that it was a bit more, felt more like a 6 to 7 page book more than anything. And yeah, that was the sort of first reiteration where we got all of our ideas out onto a whiteboard. We then translated that into an actual Google Doc, and we had something that we can then take and brand and share with our team. And what I found was that while we sometimes missed the boat on our 12-month targets, like a lot of entrepreneurs do, we were pretty darn accurate as far as the vivid vision at the time for where we wanted to grow the company to. The second reiteration was a really interesting one because, apologize if there's any background noise or anything like that. I'm in Burleigh Heads, Australia right now, so we're just making do with remote podcasting. But the second reiteration was a big learning lesson in itself because we had a vision to franchise our business and we got real clear on what that would look like. And halfway through, we realized that, well, that was the vision. It wasn't us. And we had to actually pivot after about a year and a half into it to restructure the vision once again and renew it. So that's the other thing you find as you actually go and execute on your vision is that sometimes you get wake up calls and that isn't the direction that you want to go in. But without actually clarifying the vision, you don't know if your guardrails are in place. It's sort of like bumper cars in a bowling alley. You can bounce back and forth all day and you're still going to hit one or two pins, or not bumper cars, just bumpers in general. But without those guardrails in place, you might just be throwing the ball in the gutter every year, ultimately to realize in 3 years that you didn't really get it even remotely close to where you wanted.
That's awesome. That's so my mind went to when you said, because I went from there's some fear in creating such a vivid, concrete example of where we want to go. you then said, because you were so clear on where you want to go, you went there and you realized you didn't actually want that, which is a gift in itself. And I went back to, I used to do a lot of tinkering. I used to, do stuff, build stuff. I got like probably the craziest project I did was like a custom bookshelf in the shape of the S in the Superman logo. And I knew exactly what it had to look like at the end, but I had no sweet clue how to get there. And I just started and went on the path of that vivid vision and eventually came up with a shelf. It was strong. You're still using it to this day, but there were lots of like false starts in different ways. But it was still like, if that was my 3-year project, we got there. But if I hadn't known where we were going, it's kind of like if you book a vacation, like you don't necessarily know all the steps, but you set that end goal, and then you're going to have to pack at some point. You're going to have to get in the car and you're going to have to go. You might have to buy a trailer to take all the stuff because you have 50 kids and it's going to take, all of that to take it there. But that really clicked for me. I appreciate you walking through that. And I love that you had that pivot too, because that gives you the freedom to do that if you need, but you'll never know unless you go there and give yourself that gift of actually sticking to a plan.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And just the process of getting your thoughts out, that's the biggest value that I find. And your team's looking for that direction too. And it sort of puts you in a different bucket from most other junk removal companies or companies in general, if you do have that clarity, because, out of I don't know how many junk removal companies are in North America and Australia, probably 30, 40,000 plus, if you include everybody. Most people aren't doing this. And so when you're going to hire and build your team, that sort of gives you a bit of a competitive advantage in itself to be able to clearly speak to where the future of the company is going to be, what it's going to look like. And the more you write, the more you brainstorm, the more you think about it, the more it comes clearly. And then all of a sudden your team members start to see, now I can see where I play a fit in my role in this company, as well as like my growth trajectory for an employee in the company and where we're going to be 3 years from today. They can almost start filling in the bricks on the wall as far as like, this is how I can play an impact to help grow this company, rather than just, again, day by day, month by month, which can get exhausting not knowing where that future is.
It works really well for people that want to sign up for just a job for the rest of their life and they want to live the same year over and over. But for the A players that want to go somewhere, if they don't know where you're going, did you see a difference in the quality of the people that you were able to bring onto the team after that?
Yeah, particularly with the people we've got a lot of people in our company that have gone from, say, truck team navigator to driver to team lead to trainer to operations coordinator, operations manager, director of operations. One of them is actually Alex, a partner in the company now. And when they can start carving out the clarity for their path, now the conversations that we have with them sort of on an annual basis around their growth, and more so the planning on an annual basis, the conversations are much more frequent than that. Now it goes from this is what I want to this is how I can see myself achieving that. And then we also have real life examples in the company of people following through on the vision and kind of going from there. And now we actually have some of our team members are developing, I do this as well with my wife, they're developing their own vivid visions for their personal lives. And that's a different set of buckets. Usually it's health, relationships, friendships, adventure, wealth. Those are more of the individual buckets. But in that career section, they're mapping out their future with 505 junk more so than using more generic terms like I want to become a marketing manager. They're saying I want to become 505 junk's marketing manager. And that's pretty cool to be able to actually like follow through on that growth for them as well.
That's huge. What's the craziest thing you wrote in your vivid vision over the last 9 years that you were like, man, I have no idea how we're going to do this, but it just happened because everyone was aligned?
Honestly, probably doing what we're doing right now. My wife and I are in Australia for 2 months. And when I met her, it was essentially a deal breaker to be able to visit her where she was born and raised in Brisbane, Australia, because her sisters are here, her mom's here, her family's here, her friendships are here. For me to think that it was going to be okay for her to just never visit again it just wouldn't have worked. And so we had a conversation very early on in the relationship that if we were going to take this to the next level, we were going to have to figure out a way on how to get down here, not just a week or two a year, but actually spend a meaningful amount of time. And as an entrepreneur, that can frankly be crazy to even think that, not to mention actually go ahead and do it. And so we built that into our, vivid vision for ourselves as a family, and seeing it come to life has been probably one of the most rewarding things, because it knocks off the buckets of adventure. It knocks off the bucket of family and we've got two families in Vancouver, Canada and Brisbane, Australia, which are literally a 14-hour flight apart.
Wow.
Not easy to do, but if you get clear on that, we can figure out how to do it after that. But we needed to figure out that was like a priority very early on.
That's huge. One more thing following up from our original podcast. What would be resources that you would give to someone asking for a friend on the team touch-ins, the like books? I'm looking specifically for books maybe that had influenced you in this regard, building the team, touching in with the team, quarterly, yearly reviews that would supplement kind of that vivid vision and growing the team.
Yeah. So of course the Vivid Vision book is sort of like the Bible.
Yep.
We then created actually, you know what I could do? I can send you a template that we use after this. If you could share it with your audience, where we basically just sort of like white labeled a template so that it's usable by anybody. And then what we do now is I still like to go away and actually take time to get out of the day to day and think through it. But with AI now, it's more about sitting down and brainstorming because AI can kind of write the rest, right? And then we can edit it after that. So it's a lot easier. A lot of the time consuming stuff was just writing the paragraphs, which isn't what this is all about. What this is about is getting really clear on every area of bucket in the business. And so it just took several reiterations for us to kind of figure out what those buckets were. And now it's getting a lot more efficient because when I'm working with other sort of junk removal companies, it's more about, okay, here's the sandbox that we plan. Here's your buckets. Here's some suggested things to think through. And then they can then kind of list out everything that they want for their business, whether it's there's different things you need to build into your vision if you're a $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 million company. There's different org structures, there's different roles, there's different facilities, there's a different number of trucks, there's different marketing strategies. And so I always like to start with the number first. What revenue are you going to go after? And then we sort of like reverse engineer it from there. But a combination between, Cameron's book plus a little bit of guidance on a template, that's where we can then fill in the notes and then bring it to life with AI after that, which is a nice luxury to be in the last couple of years.
It is. Yeah. It takes you're still doing all the work of ideating. And then it's kind of a scribe for you to condense all of those thoughts into something meaningful to share. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into I titled this live on Facebook. I'm not quite sure what the podcast title will end up being when we go on the podcast platforms, but I titled it, "It's a Crime Not to Track Your Marketing." Let's get into that. What are the main things that you guys track in marketing? Well, let's start there, and then we'll take the conversation where it goes.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm actually going to pull up our marketing plan because there's a few areas of it that I don't want to miss on. So when we're looking at, first of all, how we sort of structure it is we kind of do all of our lead sources on the left of a Google spreadsheet. Mm-hmm. And then we do all the months at the top. And what I like to do actually, before we even get into all the marketing from a business standpoint, I like to understand our projected overhead for the year. I then like to look at what we think our gross profit margin is going to be for that year, given the price increases that we're going to do. And then we start to get clarity around how much gross profit dollar-wise do we need to generate on a monthly basis to break even? And then how much gross profit dollar-wise do we need to generate to earn the net profit that we're after? And then
clear on the numbers.
Crystal clear on the numbers. And then we get into the marketing after that. So when it comes down to marketing, I like to bucket it in the marketing. I like to bucket it down into, and it's a hybrid between sort of business development and marketing. So the first bucket we look at is our business development. So for our outbound sales to recurring commercial accounts, what kind of revenue are we looking at per employee on a monthly basis? So if it's just you, the business owner, doing it, what kind of revenue do you intend to bring in? We then look at, in our case, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. There's about 4 people that are responsible to be bringing in recurring commercial revenue. Then we've got our digital marketing bucket. So the big one's obviously Google, looking at whether it's like Google Ads, SEO, LSA, all that kind of stuff. Certain other areas like, Meta, Yelp, looking through here. A little bit on some of the older dogs like the Better Business Bureau, email marketing, starting to get some leads coming in through Reddit and a few different channels there. We're looking at Chat GPT, depending on, the future of search, starting to see a bit of lead flow there. Next bucket after digital marketing is referrals and partnerships. So client referrals, employee referrals. We've got a section called other referrals, which is just like a group of everything. Last section is traditional marketing. So we're looking at any like direct mail, truck signage, trade shows. Even got yellow pages in there because we've got a few outstanding accounts that found us through the yellow pages years ago and continue to book revenue on a monthly basis.
That's awesome.
We've got all of our newspaper, local ads that we do, which we're not doing as much anymore. That was more of a COVID era thing when everyone was actually at home reading local newspapers. And then we combine all of the revenue for all of that, and that's what gives us our total revenue. Now, each sort of bucket that we talked about, there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's about 8 KPIs per bucket. Google has quite a few more KPIs because of the robustness of the campaigns, but we're typically looking at the spend per campaign, the revenue per campaign, the number of leads per campaign, the number of jobs per campaign. Those divided by each other gives us our close rate per campaign, our gross profit per campaign. Now, for the record, we don't track gross margin per campaign. We just take the average gross profit across the board, maybe make a few assumptions if we need to get a little more clear on that. And then the most important one for us is the gross profit return on marketing investment per campaign. So that when we know we deploy $1 into a campaign, how many gross profit dollars are we getting back in return? And we're looking to quantify that return when we're making some decisions.
How are you quantifying gross profit return on each marketing campaign? Do you have all of the job costs already tied in there and calculated into it?
Yes. So we're looking at, so when we're looking at the spend, that's easily quantifiable per campaign. In our CRM, we use a platform called Bonago. It allows us to track the number of leads, as well as the number of jobs, as well as the average job size per campaign. And then to get the gross profit per campaign, we're typically just looking at the gross margin across the board rather than getting like really linear on the actual like job cost per lead source. So, and I share that because in junk removal, the average job size is, call it $500, give or take, maybe lower for residential, higher for commercial. If we were, say, a home builder and the average job size was 500,000, we're going to be wanting to track every single cost per job that we do. But, when we're doing dozens of jobs per day, we just found that the return on time investment of knowing every dollar of every job was outweighed by just being a bit more general and average about the actual gross profit across the board.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm glad because that's where my mind was going. I was like, how much time are they spending on the numbers?
Yeah,
that's
no.
awesome.
So like one of the core values of Bolt is default to action. I much prefer to just take action than sit here behind a spreadsheet and sort of analyze and talk about things all day. So yeah, we like to know the data to make decisions, but that's about it.
One of my first mentors in this business said, imperfect action beats perfect inaction every day of the week. And it's always stuck with me.
It's so true.
Where do you see junk removal business owners in general, where do you see them really go off the rails and not tracking what you think is like one of the most important things they should be tracking?
It's a great question. So everyone's going to know their spend, obviously, because, P&L, basic stuff. So let's just assume that everyone knows the spend per campaign, whether it's Google ads or Yelp ads or Meta ads or whatever it is, or your investment into an SEO supplier. Surprisingly, a lot of people aren't aware of the revenue per campaign. And while it's not critical to know the number of leads, the average job size, the sales close rate per campaign, knowing the revenue per campaign is. And everybody's CRM system should be able to track the revenue per campaign as a starting point. So attributing a lead source to a customer account and running reports on the revenue for those lead sources. But I would love to see business owners starting to get into the more detailed data of how many leads did that generate? What's the sales conversion rate on that? And that's when you can start to make more adjustments as far as, what is the return on our Google ad spend? Does Yelp ads actually work? Or do we just save some of that budget and reinvest it into that? If we just launched Meta ads, how many leads did we get from our first 3 months? Not so that we can panic and quit Meta ads, more so that we can adjust the campaign to represent a reasonable cost per lead, sort of on a, per click basis or a dollar basis.
Yeah. I love that you track the leads and the jobs from it. I think those are two really important metrics because your close rate is important. If you're, getting 100 leads from Facebook over a 3-month period or a month period, probably more in your case, and you're only closing, 10% of them, okay, well, is it worth it? Is your cost of acquisition worth it for those? And, compare it to the other ones. And then you kind of know which bucket to put more money into and to go harder into.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly it. And also knowing, do we have a sales problem or a marketing problem? And for us, that changes on a monthly basis, right? If we just hire someone in sales and our revenue for inbound sales, I think we've got a team of 5 inbound salespeople sort of full time Monday through Sunday. And if we just hire someone that is still in training, but is starting to answer inbound calls, if their sales conversion rate is 40% and the team average is 66, we don't have a marketing problem. We have a sales training problem. And so that's where we need to sort of invest our time. If our sales conversion rate across the board is, we typically target 60% close rate on new accounts, higher obviously on repeat, but 60% for new. And the average on the month is 62%, and we're not hitting our targets. We've got a lead problem. And so that's where it's nice to be able to identify the issues and not make any assumptions around where the biggest problems in the company are.
Yeah, they kill all the time, but especially when you start at that scale. I was just listening to Hormozy today talking about the theory of constraints and how, they weren't reaching a revenue goal. And it just came down to, it wasn't an issue in sales. It was literally HR wasn't able to bring in new salespeople quick enough to grow to where he was. And he's like, I calculated I lost 12 million last year because I didn't figure out that theory of constraints. And so if you know where to look, that's big. How often are you reviewing the numbers?
More than the average. So I don't want to throw people off thinking you need to do this, but our director
every day he wakes up and he's scrolling it when he's
our director of marketing is monitoring our KPIs on an hourly basis. Just because there's such a high investment, and I think the Google ad spend is upwards of 20,000 right now. And if we're not maximizing the ROI on that campaign, like we know, there's a lot of money to be thrown away. Not so much on, so Google ads more, SEO less frequently, probably more on a weekly, monthly basis. And other areas where spend isn't quite as high, monthly's totally fine, right? When we're looking at more, then we also like to do more of like a quarterly review where we're looking at not so much like immediate impact on the campaigns, more so strategic initiatives that we can look to. Do we need to pivot off a campaign into a new one? But a lot of it with Google ads, as well as if we're getting, one of the ones that just popped up a few weeks ago is we started doing truck team advertising on Indeed to do hires for our team. And what a lot of people were doing were going and typing in, 505 junk, career or job, and our ad would pop up. And on branded, it's less, so it's not the end of the world, but on our branded campaign. But so we had to put a negative keyword in for career, 505 junk career or 505 junk job, knowing that they'll just scroll down and find what they're looking for. But do we need to be spending $6, $7, $8 per click on someone that's just looking to apply for a job? Probably not. And so it's those like constant, just trying to mitigate as much loss as possible. That's ultimately what we're trying to do. We're just trying to mitigate the loss as much as possible. And the more we do that, it just increases the gains over time.
Yeah, it's huge. Because at that, $20K per month, there's a lot of, really at any time, you've got to be watching those, especially when you're running ads. But at $20K per month, there's a lot of juice to be squeezed potentially from the leads coming in, as well as if you're missing small things, that compounds really fast.
Yeah, really absolutely. Fast. The key there is to set up the systems so that despite being in the truck, first of all, I say this to everyone. Number one thing you want to do as a junk removal owner is get out of the truck as soon as possible. And I know that's easier said than done, but just keep that in the back of your mind as you reinvest any gross profit from your company in the first 6, 12, 18 months. Like putting it back into that first hire will pay serious dividends long term, even if it is a bit of a personal sacrifice on the financials in the beginning. But regardless, even if you're, taking inbound calls in the truck and open up accounts in your CRM, what you want to do is when you're, assuming you have a CRM to begin with, you can start to accredit that lead source in the CRM in the first place. And if you're not within the customer account, so then you at least know where your revenue is coming from and you can start running reports on that. If you're not running your own Google ads, and Lewis, you can speak to this, is whoever, whether you're doing it yourself or having someone else running it for you, they'll be able to report on the actual number of leads that you're getting on a monthly basis. And you can start by just matching that to the actual number of jobs that you've booked in. And you'll start to know approximately what your sales conversion rate and the number of leads and your cost per leads and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, great answer. That's why we waited around for you to answer him. Awesome. I wonder if we could go back to if you were to start 505 again, what you would do differently. That's, I think about this, actually, same podcast from Alex. No, it was a different one. He was talking about a guy who grew a butcher box to 600 million a year. And in the podcast, he was like, one thing his mentor said is like, go back to if you were buying your business today, what would you fix as soon as you walked through the doors? And he's like, I'm always reframing that every time I come into my office. And so I'm kind of giving you that. Like if you were to, I guess we could hit what you want to change now, but if you were to start the business again, let's say you were walking in anytime in the first year, what would you do completely differently?
It's so funny that you say this because everything we've talked about, we learned the hard way to know that we actually could have been tracking our number of leads from the beginning. We could have been tracking the cost per lead from the beginning. We could have been tracking the sales conversion rate from the beginning. And it took us probably 7 years. Let's go 4 years before we really started taking it seriously. And by, 5+ years in, we were actually making like impactful data-driven decisions around our marketing. And obviously this is a marketing podcast, but here's the thing to just show that this isn't just biased towards the podcast concept. When we look at the number one reason why businesses fail, it's from cash flow. So where does lack of cash flow come from? It comes from lack of revenue against sort of or gross profit against our overhead, lack of profit. Where does lack of revenue come from? It's the lack of our sales conversion rate. Well, even if we have a good sales conversion rate, that's not going to fix the fact that we still lack revenue. So where does lack of revenue truly come from? It's a lack of leads. And that's where if we could go back in time to start tracking all of our marketing data really early on from the get-go, it would have allowed us to make better decisions over the next 3, 5, 10 years. We started in 2011. So we would have been able to make better data-driven decisions from the get-go, knowing that we were not going based on our gut feeling. We were actually going based on what is actually happening in the business from a marketing standpoint.
It's a big deal. There's nothing scarier than flying blind and just thinking, at the beginning, you kind of have a gut feeling of where things are because you're so involved in it. But as you get team members in, you're flying blind without the numbers because you can't see, you're not on all the sales calls necessarily. You're not in the actual production of whatever widget it is, if it's picking up junk or if it's, making websites or it's any number of those things that we find ourselves doing. And then you're like, well, I think everything's fine. And then you're like, oh crap, everything is not fine. And then it's too late at that point because you can't adjust. You're not, as in your case, checking your Google Ads numbers hourly. That's like a really granular look at what's happening. That's huge. What's one of the biggest things that you are jumping in and teaching people in Bolt Accelerator when it comes to tracking, marketing, etc.? I know we talked in the first podcast, guys, if you haven't listened to it, it'll be live and you can kind of run through some of around the leadership, the business development stuff that we chatted about in the first one. But if we're going to go back to Bolt Accelerator, what are some of the things that you're really, consistently teaching the guys and girls that are in the accelerator?
Yeah. And do you mean from like a marketing standpoint?
From a marketing, tracking, yeah, specifically.
Yeah. I think here's the thing is that as entrepreneurs, like oftentimes I find people love data. They love the spreadsheets. They love knowing the numbers. They love understanding it. Or unfortunately, some people just don't want to even get close to it. It's not a topic they get excited about. And yeah, it's a bit of a spectrum and you can fill the gap on everything in between. Here's the thing though, somebody needs to do it. Whether it's yourself as the owner and you teach yourself Google Sheets, whether it's your marketing supplier that you're working with and you're working in sync to start to know your data, it is 100% a data element because we can't help people in Bolt if we don't know the data ourselves. So the first thing that we like to do with people is to get them onboarded onto, the spreadsheets that we've developed, and people extract the data from different CRMs, whether it's, Jobber or Bonago or everything in between. But we just want to start knowing how much are you spending? What is the cost per lead for that specific campaign that you're getting? What is the sales conversion rate when you look at the number of leads that you got versus the number of jobs? What is the average job size? Some people might have a poorly managed Google Ads campaign that's masked by the fact that they brought in really big jobs in the last 6 months and they trick themselves into thinking other people have a really well-run Google Ads campaign, but their average job size is a little low because maybe their pricing's off. And so knowing all these details allow us to make better decisions. And we help people in Bolt make better decisions. That's one of the biggest sort of value adds that I like to talk about. But I don't like making recommendations to people unless we truly know the numbers. So the first thing we always look at is let's start by like adopting some systems so that we can start tracking the numbers in the business.
people aren't paying you to go by gut, right? They're not paying you to just be like, let me pull out my tarot cards and see what's happening.
And you get good at doing that over the years. I mean, I'm pretty good at going on my gut in the Vancouver market, but at the end of the day, like, it only takes one wrong decision to really move things off. Where the gut really is useless is when we're working with someone in Los Angeles or New York City or Sydney, Australia. My opinion doesn't matter at that point. It's how do we implement the systems to start to know the data, and then based on the data and the experience that we have, how can we make like suggestions and recommendations and help people after that? Because those suggestions matter, particularly when it's data driven in a niche market like junk removal. But yeah, not without the data. So we always like to start there.
Yeah, and your gut, you said you could go by gut still, but that's because you've fine-tuned your gut with data over the last few years, and you know roughly what's happening and what's not happening. There's some magic there. I'm going to switch to a personal interest of mine, Anytime Fitness. I've been following your stories as I think it's Anytime. It's called Anytime Fitness, right?
Yeah.
What's the story with fitness? Has it always been a thing for you, or tell us the story there and how it's influenced your life as a business owner, father, husband?
Yeah. So, fitness in general has been a part of one of my buckets. I grew up playing soccer, was a professional snowboarder. But as I started spending more time behind spreadsheets and less time outdoors, kind of a joke for spending more time as an entrepreneur. The reality is most of the time, if you're out of the trucks as a business owner, it's with meeting people either online or in person or spending time behind a laptop. And so what I found is that I wasn't happy with the direction of where my fitness was going. And so I started running, and I started running lots, 5 kilometers or whatever, 3 or 4 miles a day, trying to get about 800, 900 miles in a year of just running. Started running half marathons, got into a full marathon, and I still wasn't quite happy with it. And so when I started researching more around like nutrition and lifting weights in conjunction with still getting some cardio, that's when I started to see a big shift. So, I used to like to drink a lot, for example, and I basically removed alcohol from my diet for 2.5 years, which was probably one of the harder things to do. Nutrition, wasn't afraid to go get a little fast food here and there, or just go to a restaurant and order pizza instead of the healthier option. And I'm not looking for perfection. I'm just looking for more conscious decisions at this point. And then the biggest one was actually lifting weights. And so my friend had owned an Anytime Fitness franchise. I looked into it, really spent no time in the gym up until about 2.5 years ago. And what really drew me to Anytime particularly was that anywhere I go, there seems to be one. So I'm in the Gold Coast of Australia right now. There's one 5 minutes from here. In my hometown, small town Tawasin, Canada, there's one 5 minutes from my house. We're going to Brisbane in a month. There's 3 in Brisbane alone. And so just being able to have access to the gym was a big part of that decision. And now I try and go about 4 or 5 days a week, following a fitness plan that was built by a fitness trainer, fairly inexpensive. And I just have found that actually lifting weights in conjunction with cardio has allowed me to, I do it first thing in the morning. So, before I go into the office, go to the gym, lift my weights, have a shower, and then head in after that. And I just find it clears my head. My resilience for all the problems that come in the business seem to be a lot easier, knowing that
you've already faced the biggest, literal resistance of the day, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there's going to be problems every single day popping up in the business. So why not put yourself in, the best mental position to be able to handle that? And of course, one of the physical benefits is, I'm a lot happier with where I'm at as far as like my body and my weight and all that kind of stuff compared to like even 3 or 4 years ago. So yeah, that's still Mr. Rodney.
That's cool. Yeah, coming from, the professional sports world and then transitioning to spreadsheets. I didn't go to professional sports. I grew up on a farm, so I used to joke about being paid to work out instead of having to pay. And then it's a bit of a shocker on the body to go to the spreadsheets. So it's funny. I did running too for a couple of years. I had to kind of stop last year due to an injury. I'm just getting into the gym. I'm like a month and a bit into the gym, really for the first time in my life. Really enjoying it. It's a different feeling. I think the combination will be good.
Yeah, and you get more for anyone that's just trying it out for the first time. When you first walk in, it's fairly intimidating because the average person's been going
super intimidating. Yeah.
And there's all these equipment and weights, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. So you just grab a weight and you start doing this. But
For me, I just went to the corner and rode because that's what I was familiar with. And then I was like,
yeah,
this isn't going to work. I gotta get a trainer. So then I hired someone to build out a plan. And it's like, now we're actually making progress with all these random things that all the sweaty big dudes carry around the gym all the time.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I found a trainer is the best way to just like break the ice, and they just basically force you on everything. And you do that for 4 or 5 months and it's like you've been there your whole life.
Yeah, it's huge. What, as we wrap up here, we will have links to Bolt Accelerator, but I am curious, again, from a personal perspective, what books are you excited about that you've read recently or are getting into?
Yeah. What was, I always forget the names. Patrick, I just want to pull it up, the exact book. There's a book by Patrick Bet David called Your Next 5 Moves. I'm just wrapping it up right now. And it's about business strategy, but not like next quarter, next year, even like kind of it's more in line with sort of the 3-year visionary type work. But he's always thinking, what is my next like business strategy move that's going to have like the most exponential return on the long run, knowing that we're all competing in our industry against 1-800-GOT-JUNK, college hunks hauling junk, all these big franchise systems. In his case, he was in financial management, and he was going up against the mafia sometimes. And he's like, his examples from the book aren't saying adopt what they do, but do know how they think, so that when we're making big strategic decisions, that you have a full understanding as to what you're going up against and how to be honest and true and real with yourself about how to best prepare yourself for success. And he's got a whole bunch of examples in there around what he's personally learned over the years. He also has an incredible podcast that he's been interviewing people for years on, and is sharing like real life examples from people that he's learned from directly. So definitely worth 4 or 5 hours on Audible if you get a chance to pick it up.
Definitely agree. It's been a couple of years since I read that one while I was running, listened to it while I was running. So I'll have to pick that one up. Really good. Patrick, PBD, as he's called, the PBD podcast he's got as well. Just super good stuff. Super good stuff. We got to dig back into that for sure. Barry, appreciate your time. Appreciate you handling the interruption there like the professional that you are. Appreciate you coming on twice on the podcast. First episode was a lot around leadership. At least that's what I took away from it. Leadership, team building, business development, stuff like that. This one we hit, a little bit at the beginning there with a vivid vision, but then diving into tracking your marketing. Guys, if you take anything away, you got to be tracking where your marketing is coming from, what's happening, what the cost was, put that in your CRM. But like I always say at the end of these episodes, pick something and go do it. Go be a hunter. Don't just be someone sitting back and hoping that the Facebook and Google gods bring you leads, because you might not be converting them, or your team might not be converting them the way that they need to be. Barry, again, thank you so much for coming on. Awesome to chat with you again, even though you're living not even in the same day that we are now. It's cool that we can come together and make this happen. He's living in the beginning of Tuesday, and we're finishing up Monday here as he's in Australia. But we'll drop Barry's stuff in the comments there. Barry, anything you want to leave the listeners with before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the, first of all, thanks so much for having me. But one of the values, like I said, at Bolt, it's just default to action. And if you can just take one little thing, read a book that was recommended, or start tracking your leads, or, adopt a spreadsheet, or sit down for just one day, not a week, not a month, and get clear on where you want your business to be in 3 years from today. Just take action, one thing. And going through that process of developing a habit of defaulting to action will be the starting point for all the other next steps you're going to take in building your business. And that's often the difference between some of the most successful people that you read about and the people that are in a bit of a standstill, is they just take action.
If that isn't the core premise of this whole podcast, I don't know what is. So I can't follow that with anything better, aside from to thank Dan and Jim for Dan Kane says, see you at the top. Jim says, appreciate the content. And Dan's going to get working on tracking some stuff here. So appreciate everyone who listens in live on the podcast. Very appreciate you once again. And guys, we will see you next time. Talk soon.